In mid-February 1943, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel sat inside his command post near the Tunisian border, writing a private letter to his wife, Lucy, while the desert outside echoed with celebration. His forces had just smashed through American defenses at Kasserine Pass, and across the Afrika Korps, officers believed they had delivered a decisive blow, one that confirmed everything Germany thought it knew about its new enemy. Inside the command post, Rommel was not celebrating. He was thinking, weighing what he had seen, and committing his conclusions to paper. The letter was direct, unsentimental, and brutally honest, shaped by battlefield observation rather than arrogance. Rommel wrote that the Americans were inexperienced, poorly trained, and led by officers whose mistakes would have resulted in immediate court-martial in any European army. At Kasserine Pass, he had watched American units collapse, retreat without orders, and abandon equipment across the battlefield. In just 6 days of fighting, more than 6,000 American soldiers became casualties, entire battalions surrendered, and vehicles were left burning in the sand. To Rommel, it looked disturbingly familiar, the same kind of breakdown he had witnessed when French forces disintegrated in 1940. This was not merely a defeat, it was a humiliation, one that struck at American confidence itself. For American soldiers raised on stories of First World War heroism, Kasserine shattered illusions overnight, forcing many to question whether they truly belonged on a modern battlefield. Rommel believed he was seeing something deeper than a tactical failure. He believed he was watching the American spirit crack under pressure. He told Lucy that if Germany struck again within weeks, before lessons could be learned, the Americans could be driven into the sea. That assessment was forwarded to Berlin, framed as both a warning and an opportunity. Exploit American weakness immediately, deny them time to adapt, and strike before leadership could mature. Rommel's conclusion was not born from prejudice. It was built from what he had observed under fire. At Kasserine Pass, American failures followed a clear and repeatable pattern, one that German intelligence documented in detail. Commanders positioned units poorly, radio discipline collapsed under stress, and coordination between infantry and armor was nearly non-existent. When German pressure increased, American formations pulled back without coordination, triggering panic that spread across the front. The American Second Corps commander, Major General Lloyd Fredendall, embodied the problem. He had placed his headquarters inside a canyon nearly 70 miles behind the front, directing the battle by radio, blind to the terrain and the men fighting on it. His orders were confused, often contradictory, and detached from reality on the ground. German intelligence officers noted a crucial distinction. American equipment was serviceable, American soldiers fought bravely when cornered, but the command structure was dangerously amateur. These were not troops hardened by combat against the Wehrmacht. They were learning modern warfare in real time, against Germany's most experienced formations. Rommel calculated that it would take at least 6 months to repair American leadership failures, and closer to a year to develop effective doctrine. If Germany attacked again in March, he believed the outcome would mirror Kasserine. German armored doctrine had succeeded everywhere since 1939, and Rommel saw no reason it would fail now. The formula was simple, brutal, and proven. Concentrate superior force at a weak point, smash through with armor, then exploit with mobile formations until the enemy collapsed or was encircled. This approach had destroyed French armies in 6 weeks, shattered Soviet formations in 1941, and driven British forces across North Africa twice. It worked because most armies defended passively, clinging to fixed lines that German mobility could bypass. At Kasserine, the Americans fought the same way. They dug in, waited to be attacked, and retreated when armored pressure focused on weak sectors. Rommel studied the terrain near El Getter in central Tunisia, and what he saw reinforced his confidence. The ground favored armor, American units were still recovering, and the psychological advantage alone would be decisive. A late March offensive there could finish what Kasserine had begun. Berlin approved Rommel's assessment. One more offensive, they believed, would shatter American morale completely. After that, German forces could turn fully against the British, while the Americans shipped a defeated army home. Then intelligence reports introduced a complication. In early March, German analysts noted a command change within American Second Corps. Lieutenant General George S. Patton Jr. assumed command on March 6, 1943, taking over the same formation that had collapsed weeks earlier. When Patton arrived at headquarters, the atmosphere changed instantly, even before he spoke a word. He arrived in a siren-blaring motorcade, wearing his ivory-handled revolvers, projecting authority through spectacle and certainty. He did not issue suggestions, he delivered ultimatums. The era of the soft American, Patton declared, was finished. He enforced strict discipline, requiring ties and regulation helmets even in desert heat, not for vanity, but to restore professional identity. Officers without proper uniforms were fined. Soldiers who failed to salute were corrected publicly. German intelligence dismissed the impact. No commander, they believed, could repair systemic failure in 3 weeks. Patton might improve morale, enforce discipline, but doctrine could not be rewritten overnight. Rommel's health was deteriorating rapidly, stomach ailments worsening, exhaustion setting in, yet his mind remained sharp. Before relinquishing operational control to General Hans-Jürgen von Arnim, he reviewed the Elgeter plan one final time. Every assumption rested on American passivity, hesitation, and inexperience. The logic was sound, based on every opponent Germany had faced. 3 weeks, Rommel believed, could not transform an army. On March 22, 1943, German forces prepared to attack American positions near Elgeter. The order of battle included the 10th Panzer Division, equipped with Mark V tanks, and the veteran Italian Centauro Division. Commanders briefed their units on expected American behavior. The Americans would defend fixed positions, call for air support that might not arrive, then retreat under pressure, just as they had at Kasserine. German tanks possessed superior armor and firepower, with 75mm guns capable of penetrating Sherman tanks at 2,000 yards. American guns needed to close dangerously close to respond. Artillery plans were finalized, designed to suppress American positions and enable armored breakthrough. Everything was engineered to repeat the earlier victory. On March 23, 1943, dawn broke over Elgeter. German forces advanced confidently, expecting another collapse. They were about to discover that 3 weeks had been enough to change everything that mattered. At 6 a.m., the attack began. Lead elements of the 10th Panzer Division rolled forward toward positions held by the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One. Visibility was clear, terrain favorable, and the plan unfolding perfectly. Then American artillery erupted. This was not scattered fire, not ranging shots, but synchronized time-on-target barrages that slammed multiple batteries onto German positions at the same instant. Every gun in 2nd Corps concentrated fire at the exact same second. German forces, still relying heavily on horse-drawn artillery, could not replicate this precision. The accuracy was shocking, the volume overwhelming, and tanks began taking direct hits. Radio traffic filled with urgent medical evacuation requests from the front. The Americans were not suppressed, they were responding with discipline and control. Forward observers directed fire with professional precision, revealing trained crews and practiced coordination. The 10th Panzer Division continued forward, assuming resistance would eventually break. German commanders ordered units to push through. American tank destroyers opened fire from concealed positions, striking German armor from the flanks. Anti-tank weapons had been placed to create deadly crossfires, denying safe avenues of advance. By 9 a.m., German forces had advanced roughly 2,000 yards. Normally this signaled progress, but something was wrong. The Americans were not retreating, they were executing controlled withdrawals to prepared secondary positions. For the men of the Big Red One, Elgeter was more than a battle. It was a reckoning, a chance to erase Kasserine. As German armor advanced, they did not look for escape, they aligned their sights. Fear had been replaced with controlled aggression. German radio intercepts captured calm, professional American communications. Officers issued clear orders, units reported positions, and fields of fire were coordinated. This was not the chaotic chatter of Kasserine Pass. American infantry held under fire until ordered to withdraw, then moved deliberately and resumed fighting. They preserved cohesion, forcing the Germans to pay for every yard. On the right flank, the Italian Centauro Division reported heavy resistance. American machine guns pinned advancing infantry, overlapping fire zones cutting down assaults. The battlefield had been prepared with care and intent. By noon, the German advance stalled at roughly 3,000 yards. This was not the breakthrough commanders had anticipated. General Hans-Jürgen von Arnim, now commanding in Tunisia, reviewed reports with growing concern. Objectives were not being achieved, casualties were mounting, and American resistance remained organized. The intelligence assessment no longer matched reality. The terrain was similar to Kasserine, American tanks were still inferior, yet the enemy fought with coordination and aggression. Intercepted radio traffic revealed confidence, not panic. Artillery concentrated fire with devastating effect, infantry counterattacked instead of yielding ground. On March 24th, von Arnim recommended suspending the offensive. Losses were too heavy, gains too small, and American defenses too strong. German forces withdrew, the operation abandoned. German intelligence urgently sought answers. Captured Americans were questioned, documents examined, battlefield evidence studied. No new equipment had arrived, no massive reinforcements, no months of retraining. The transformation had occurred in 21 days under Patton. His method was simple, ruthless, and effective. First, leadership was purged. Officers who hesitated were removed. Those who attacked were promoted. Command positions went to men who understood speed and aggression. Second, doctrine was rewritten through action. Every unit learned to counterattack immediately. Artillery focused overwhelming fire at decisive points. Defense meant aggressive patrolling, never passive waiting. Third came psychological transformation. Patton instilled superiority through training, rewarding aggression and punishing hesitation. Success was recognized publicly, failure corrected immediately. The lesson was unmistakable. Attack succeeds. Hesitation fails. German commanders analyzed El Getter with grim clarity. American doctrine neutralized German advantages. Concentrated armor now faced mobile anti-tank crossfires. German momentum collapsed under immediate counterattacks. Technical superiority meant little against coordination and firepower. American artillery became a mechanical symphony of destruction. For German infantry, it felt as if the sky itself was falling. They were not fighting individuals, they were fighting a system. The Americans made German advantages irrelevant through coordination. Rommel, before leaving Tunisia, revised his assessments. The Americans had learned faster than any opponent Germany had faced. Future offensives would require far greater resources and new thinking. On March 6, 1943, two critical events unfolded simultaneously. Rommel launched his final North African offensive at Medellin, and it failed within a single day. British forces stopped German armor cold with coordinated anti-tank fire. That same day, Patton assumed command of 2nd Corps. Rommel's departure and Patton's arrival marked a symbolic shift. 3 days later, on March 9th, Rommel flew to Germany on sick leave. His health was failing, and he would never return to Africa. Before leaving, he warned commanders that American forces were improving rapidly. Those warnings were ignored. El Getter confirmed everything Rommel had predicted. On May 13, 1943, German forces in Tunisia surrendered. More than 250,000 Axis soldiers became prisoners. The North African campaign was over. In less than 3 months, American forces moved from humiliation to victory. German doctrine adapted, issuing warnings about aggressive American tactics. Those warnings proved accurate in Sicily on 10 July 1943. Patton's 7th Army advanced rapidly, reaching Messina on August 17. German defenders reported American aggression combined with overwhelming logistics. Defensive operations became nearly impossible. By 6 June 1944, Rommel commanded German defenses in France. His doctrine anticipated rapid American inland advances. Mobile reserves were positioned close to the beaches. His assessment of Americans had completely changed. They combined material superiority with aggressive tactics. Static defense no longer worked. On D-Day, Hitler's refusal to release panzer reserves undermined Rommel's plan. Still, American forces pushed inland relentlessly. Rommel understood what others still denied. After the war, German generals confirmed it. Americans learned faster than any enemy Germany had faced. Their artillery coordination rendered old doctrine obsolete. The army that collapsed at Kasserine became one of history's most effective fighting forces. Rommel's initial assessment was logical, but Patton proved it wrong in 3 weeks. The change was permanent. By May 13, 1943, German commanders understood the truth. Leadership mattered more than experience. Doctrine mattered more than equipment. Germany built better tanks. America built better doctrine. At El Getter, doctrine won.